The bizarre Kawhi Leonard situation won't resolve itself cleanly, which means the Spurs may have to pull the plug, writes Matt John. All good things must come to an end. Chaucer in 1374. If there is one team that has been the closest to replicating the Boston Celtics dynasty from the Bill Russell days, it has been the San Antonio Spurs. Over the past 2 decades, the Spurs have established a consistent model of winning thanks to Hall of Fame talent, legendary coaching and otherworldly scouting. The only other team in the entire world of sports that has rivaled the Spurs' prolonged success in the 21st century has been the New England Patriots. However, much like the Patriots, there have been more and more reports recently of dysfunction behind the scenes, with superstar Kawhi Leonard front and center to all of it. If things really are as bad as they appear to be, then Kawhi's days as a Spur are numbered, and by the same token, so are the Spurs' days of contention. No one knows what exactly is going on with Leonard at the moment. There have been reports that, physically, the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year is fully capable of returning to the floor, but he chooses not to. Now, his rehab is expected to sideline him for the entirety of the playoffs. Leonard technically isn't doing anything against the rules, but his actions have made both his team and the league take notice. Leonard and the Spurs could hypothetically reconcile and put this all behind them. But given all that's happened throughout the course of the season, the ship seems to have sailed a long time ago. Through the duration of the season, Kawhi's teammates have called him out. His coach has been steadfastly candid when asked about what's going on. And now, players around the league are already predicting who his next team will be. This all spells out a potentially ugly divorce between the Spurs and their franchise player. So, the Spurs' obvious next move would be to trade Kawhi for as much value as they can get this offseason. Unfortunately, given the circumstances, the Spurs won't be able to acquire nearly as much value for Kawhi now as they could have in years past. It is true that when Leonard is 100% healthy, he is one of the league's best players, but this bizarre situation, along with his player option after next season, has demolished his trade value. These days, teams don't give up valuable assets for star players if there's a risk that said star player could leave the team after only 1 year. Teams saw what happened to the Lakers after the Dwight Howard trade blew up in their face, and they saw how crippled the Nets became after they gave away the farm for Paul Pierce among other Celtics that they acquired. If a superstar whose contract is potentially expiring goes on the market, teams will lowball in trade discussions for him. Case in point, last summer, pretty much everyone agreed that the Thunder acquired Paul George for peanuts when they traded Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis for him. That may have worked out for the best for Indiana, but that was sheer luck because Oladipo's and Sabonis' value was much lower than it is now. Kawhi could fetch a half-decent player and maybe a late lottery pick given his reputation, but that would probably not fill the large void that he would leave behind. It's for that reason that the Spurs' reign may be coming to an end. If they trade Kawhi this summer, they're not going to get equal value for him, which means they won't be able to remain among the best in the Western Conference. It's quite a shame, because Leonard's apparent fallout with the Spurs has overshadowed one of the better under-the-radar stories in the league, the Spurs' perseverance. The fact that the Spurs still made the playoffs in the Western Conference, which required 47 wins this season, is remarkable, thanks in large part to LaMarcus Aldridge's rejuvenation, who has averaged his best numbers as a Spur this season by far, and Coach Pop's brilliance among other reasons. The Spurs have kept the ball rolling without Kawhi. Alas, without him, the team is firmly not in the title discussion, and the Spurs can't do much about it. The Spurs could ride it out by keeping the rest of the core together along with what they would bring back for Leonard, but there wouldn't be much point. Guys as impactful Leonard are not easily replaceable in this league, and the Spurs' competition in the West will be as strong as ever next season. As unappealing as it might sound, the Spurs may have to just start over. That wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world. Aldridge's phenomenal season has probably skyrocketed his trade value, so the Spurs would get a good haul for him. The Spurs aren't in a bad salary cap situation either. Besides Pau Gasol, the team doesn't have any bad contracts. Tony Parker's deal is up after this season while Rudy Gay and Danny Green have player options, but both are likely to opt in given the lack of money on the open market this summer. The team even has some intriguing young talent, such as DeJounte Murray and Bryn Forbes. Rebuilding wouldn't be the worst option for San Antonio. With all of that considered, it would still be very disappointing to see such a glorious era end so anticlimactically. Kawhi Leonard was supposed to lead the new era of Spurs basketball, but now it looks like he may be the Spurs' undoing, which they may have no choice now but to accept. Many were looking forward to San Antonio's demise, but for a team that has remained in the title discussion since the days of President Clinton, the Spurs didn't deserve an ending like this. This year's impressive rookie class has translated their regular season performances to the playoff stage. This past NBA season had the luxury of an incredibly entertaining and high-powered rookie class. Every other day it seemed like the feats of either Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Lauri Markkanen, Dennis Smith Jr., Kyle Kuzma, or Ben Simmons were dominating the discussion about how advanced the league's crop of newbies appeared to be. As a result, the 2017-18 Rookie of the Year race was a much more heated discussion than the year before. With the impressive campaign these NBA freshmen put together, it should come as no surprise that on the bright stage of playoff basketball, three of the aforementioned crop are helping lead their teams in tight first-round battles. Donovan Mitchell has been the leading scorer for the Utah Jazz through 2 games in their series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jason Tatum is stepping up for the Boston Celtics to help fill in the void of Kyrie Irving as they take on the Milwaukee Bucks. Ben Simmons is nearly averaging a triple-double through 3 games for the Philadelphia 76ers in their matchup with the Miami Heat. Lottery pick talents are expected in today's NBA to come in and have some level of impact for their clubs. Usually, they play the role as a foundational building block that shows flashes of promise with an expected up-and-down first season. While these 3 playoff contributors haven't been perfect all year long, under the pressure of the postseason, they've stepped up their play and appear to be avoiding the learning curve. With that, let's highlight further what Mitchell, Tatum, and Simmons have been able to do thus far in the postseason. Donovan Mitchell, Utah Jazz. All season long Mitchell threw the entire scoring load of Salt Lake City on his back for the Jazz and helped carry them to a 5 seed in the Western Conference when early season projections suggested they should head towards in the wake of Rudy Gobert's injury. However, the 13th pick out of Louisville had no intentions of missing out on the postseason. And from the looks of his production so far, who can blame him? Through the first 2 games of the Jazz-Thunder series, Mitchell yet again placed his name in the same breath as Michael Jordan. Mitchell's 55 points in his first 2 playoff games broke Jordan's record of 53 for most points scored by a rookie guard in that scenario. Mitchell's 27 points in Game 1 and 28 points in Game 2 led the Jazz to even the series and steal home court advantage from the Thunder, while he hasn't been responsible for setting up the team's offense. Tallying just 5 assists through those 2 games, Mitchell is fulfilling the role of Gordon Hayward as the team's primary scorer. In a series against a team that features the likes of Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony, Utah needs Mitchell to go out there and get as many buckets as he possibly can. So far, he appears to be welcoming the challenge. Jason Tatum, Boston Celtics. When it was announced that Kyrie Irving would be lost for the entire postseason due to injury, the Boston Celtics' hold on the 2 seed seemed a lot less intimidating than it once was in the Eastern Conference. However, 3 games into the first-round series against the Bucks, the Celtics hold a 2-1 lead. A part of that has to do with the role Tatum has been able to step in and play right away with the Celtics down their main scorer and playmaker. Throughout the first 3 games of the series, Tatum 12.3 points, 7.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, and 2.3 steals. The 3rd overall pick in the 2017 draft started the series off with 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 steals to help Boston start off the matchup with a 1-0 lead. At just 20 years old, Tatum is matching his age number with his usage percentage thus far against Milwaukee. For some perspective, Jaylen Brown managed just 12 minutes a night for the Celtics last season as a rookie when the playoffs rolled around. Granted, injuries and missing players are helping in Tatum being on the court as much as he has, but the rookie is earning his time out there on the court. Ben Simmons, Philadelphia 76ers. The perceived front-runner for Rookie of the Year, Ben Simmons has taken control in his first ever playoff series. 4 starters, Simmons is averaging nearly a triple-double over his first 3 games against the Heat, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 9.7 assists. On top of his triple-double ways, Simmons has upped arguably his biggest weakness so far in the playoffs, shooting 75% from the charity stripe. During the regular season, Simmons struggled from the line, hitting only 56% of his attempts. With the offensive prowess of Simmons obvious, it's the job he's doing on the defensive end of the court against an aggressive and tough Miami squad that's elevating his play to the next level. Simmons' ability to switch all over the defensive end of the court has placed his responsibilities from Goran Dragic to Justice Winslow to James Johnson, and seemingly everywhere in between. Now with Joel Embiid back in the fold for the Sixers and Simmons, the rookie point guard, has his defensive partner on the floor to help ease the workload on that end. A two-way performance each night will be imperative for Simmons in helping lead the young Sixers past the experienced Heat team. The supporting cast in New Orleans is a big part of their playoff surge, writes David Yapkowitz. The New Orleans Pelicans have taken a commanding 3-0 lead in their first-round playoff series against the Portland Trail Blazers. While surprising to some, the Pelicans only finished 1 game behind the Blazers in the standings. The Pelicans have the best player in the series in Anthony Davis, and the defensive duo of Rajon Rondo and Drew Holiday have stifled Portland's backcourt. The truth is, the Pelicans have been a good team all season long. A lot of attention and recognition has been given to Davis, Rondo and Holiday this season and playoffs, and rightfully so. But New Orleans wouldn't be where they are without the important contributions of some of their role players. Take Etuan Moore, for example. Moore bounced around the NBA early in his career, with stops in Boston, Orlando and Chicago before finding long-term stability contract-wise with the Pelicans. He's primarily been a bench player with them before this season, his second in New Orleans, his first as a full-time starter. He's given the Pelicans a huge boost, especially from the three-point line. He's put up 12.5 points per game on 50.8% shooting from the field, both career highs. He's shooting 42.5% from three-point range. I think it's just our style of play, Moore told Basketball Insiders. We play fast and open. Coach Gentry gives us a lot of freedom, a lot of confidence. That's why my game is up, my shooting is up. It's not just offensively though. Moore has always been one of the more underrated defensive guards in the league. Paired up alongside Rondo and Holiday, the trio form a solid wing defensive unit. They're a big reason for Portland's offensive struggles. Moore is the type of role player that every playoff contender needs to succeed. He knows that his role may change from game to game. Some nights he may be asked to score a little more. Other nights his defense is going to be called upon. Whatever it may be, he's always ready to do what's asked of him. I bring the energy. I bring a spark, Moore told Basketball Insiders. It's knocking down shots, playing defense, getting out in transition, just trying to be a spark. The Pelicans bench has also been a huge factor all season long. Their depth took a major hit early in the season with the injury to Solomon Hill. Hill has since returned to the lineup, but his absence paved the way for other players such as Darius Miller to step up. This is Miller's second stint with the Pelicans after spending 2 years overseas. Drafted 46th overall in 2012, he didn't play much his first 3 years in the NBA. In 2014, he was cut by the Pelicans only about a month into the season. This year was different. He was thrown into the rotation from the get-go. This is a huge opportunity, Miller told Basketball Insiders. I just come in and try to work every day, try to get better every day. My teammates have done a great job of putting me in situations where I can be successful. Miller has given the Pelicans a capable stretch four in the second unit who can slide over to small forward if need be. He's averaging a career-best 7.8 points per game, the most out of any of New Orleans' reserves. He's their best three-point shooter off the bench, connecting on 41.1% of his long-range attempts. While he acknowledges that he's enjoying his best season yet as an NBA player, he's quick to praise his teammates for allowing him to flourish. I just try to bring a spark off the bench. I come in and try to knock some shots down, Miller told Basketball Insiders. My teammates do a great job of finding me when I'm open. I just try and knock down shots and compete. Sometimes time away from the NBA helps players grow and mature. The NBA game is fast-paced and it can take a while to get used to it. While some players have begun to use the G League as a means of preparing for the league, Miller took an alternate route of heading to Germany. For him, it's a big reason why he's been able to make an easier transition back to the NBA. His contract for next season is non-guaranteed, but he's probably done enough to warrant the Pelicans keeping him around. He's a much different and much improved player. If not, he's sure to draw interest from other teams. It was a lot to learn for me personally, Miller told Basketball Insiders. I had to learn a lot of different things like how to take care of my body, how to manage my time, a whole bunch of stuff like that. The time overseas really helped me to mature and grow up and learn a few things. These Pelicans have most certainly turned quite a few heads since the playoffs began. We shouldn't deal too much with hypotheticals, but it's interesting to wonder what this team's ceiling would have been had DeMarcus Cousins not been lost for the season due to injury. This is a confident bunch, however. They've beaten both the Golden State Warriors and Houston Rockets during the regular season. They've already shattered a lot of expert predictions with their performance in the first round. The Pelicans feel like they can hang with anyone out west. As far as we want to go, Miller told Basketball Insiders, I feel like we've competed with all the best teams in the league this whole season. We just got to come out, stay focused and do what we do. Cleveland's offense has struggled through the first 2 games of the playoffs. Can the 4-time MVP consistently bail them out? Spencer Davis writes, after a less than encouraging series opener versus the Indiana Pacers, LeBron James responded emphatically and led the Cleveland Cavaliers to a bounce-back 100-97 victory to even things up at 1 game apiece, scoring the first 13 points of the game itself. The King was a one-man wrecking crew out of the gate and carried that momentum throughout all 4 quarters of Game 2. His 46 points were James' second highest scoring mark between the regular season and the playoffs. In addition, he shot above 70% from the field for the 6th time this year. The 4-time MVP pulled down 12 rebounds total, but all but one of those boards were defensive, the most he's had since St. Patrick's Day in Chicago a month ago. What James did was another classic instance where LeBron reminds us that through all the injuries, drama, and on-court issues, whatever team he's on always has a chance to go all the way. But having said all of that, can the Cavaliers realistically depend on that kind of spectacular effort for the rest of the postseason? It's a fair question. Kevin Love is a solid secondary go-to guy, but he's struggled to find his rhythm in the first 2 games. He's done a solid job defensively between both, but he's getting banged up and is dealing with knocked knees and a reported torn thumb ligament in the same hand he broke earlier in the season. Love has admitted that he'd like more post touches instead of strictly hanging out on the perimeter, but it's on him to demand the ball more and he knows it. But finding that flow can be challenging when James has it going and is in all-out attack mode. Kyle Korver came to the rescue for Cleveland as the only shooter that consistently converted on open looks. Outside of those 3, and maybe J.R. Smith, really, there hasn't been a tangible threat that's a part of the offense during this series. We all pondered whether or not the new guys would be able to step up when their respective numbers were called. So far, that hasn't been the case for the most part. Jordan Clarkson looks rushed with tunnel vision. Rodney Hood has had good body language out there, but seems reluctant to shoot off dribble handoffs and is second-guessing what he wants to do. The hustle and effort from Larry Nance Jr. is obvious, but he's also a good bet to get into foul trouble. Plus, he's had some struggles on an island against Pacer guards. As for George Hill, the good news is the impact on the floor just based on his mere presence on both ends. Game high +16 on Wednesday, but he hasn't really done any scoring and fouled out of Game 2. Maybe these things change on the road, who knows. But those 4, the rest of the rotation, absolutely have to step up in order for the Cavaliers to win this series and fend off this hungry Indiana group, which brings us to another point. Let's not forget, the offensive issues aren't simply because of themselves. After all, the Cavs were a team that had little trouble scoring the basketball in the regular season, so give a ton of credit to the Pacers' scheme and McMillan's teachings to play hard-nosed. Unlike many teams in the league, the strategy for them is to pressure the ball and avoid switches as much as possible on screens. The more they go over the pick and stick on their assignments, the better chance they have of forcing a bad shot or a turnover. That's what happened in Game 1 and in the majority of the second half of Game 2. Cleveland has also somewhat surprisingly brought the fight on defense as well. In the first 2 contests of the series, they've allowed under 100 points. Luz said multiple times that they're willing to give up the interior buckets in order to secure the outside, and it's worked. It doesn't seem smart when there's a yellow-colored layup line going on at times, but it certainly paid off by only allowing 34% of Indiana's threes to go down. Still, looking ahead to what the Cavaliers can do in the playoffs as a whole, it doesn't bode well. They're not only locked in a tug-of-war with Indiana, but if they get past them, they could have a Toronto Raptors group chomping at the bit for revenge. If they're having this much trouble in the first round, what should make us believe they can barrel through the Eastern Conference as they've done in the past? It's not quite as obvious or as bad as Cleveland's 2007 version of James and the rest, but it feels eerily similar for as much as he's put the team on his back so far. The organization better hope improvement comes fast from his supporting cast, or else it could be a longer summer than they'd hoped for.